Now for these sessions, we have started initially during the morning session. And in the morning, we have generated the motivation. However, because this is still a Lamrim session, as we all know, or as you all know, for the Lamrim session and Lamrim teaching and study, the motivation are very important. Therefore, not to further too lengthy explanation, in short, we should think right now, not only that the Dharma must be a Mahayana Dharma, but the practitioner must be a Mahayanis themselves. This is what stated and what is taught in the Lamrim Chenmo, the great Lamrim. Therefore, according to this, for now, we think to ourselves, for the sake of all sentient beings, our kind mothers, in order to overcome their sufferings completely, and in order to present them with the ultimate happiness, we are going to achieve the state of Buddhahood itself. And in order to achieve the state of Buddhahood, we are here to listen to the Dharma. And however much listening of the Dharma that we can conduct, we try to put it into practice. I would like to ask you now to please generate the proper motivation as of now.
당아란조 상마다 지다 동해매되바다 대화되바다 상마 식소리로 제장아란조 지 동해매되바다 대화되바서야디 직송인 뒤담바다 마란조 단다 탑라 가래 배고고요레스 뒤담바 동해 바세야다 대화 토비야디 마란조 배고요라고 깔레디 자고요로 이 인디담바다 마란조 세미나 강에다 동해라 줘바 들려 용디담바 안에 지당 아란조 대화세야디 semgi tengni dubiya jigma do luigi tengni desamgida ane dubiya nuba desam yomare mebada mari yore de yinaya so digi siya di so semgi tengni dugoya semgi tengni digi dubsiya di ane samno tangna jig thone hone ane digi dugoya de jiris.
So we repeat over and over again regarding that we must overcome the suffering, not only ourselves, but all sentient beings. And then we have to present the ultimate happiness, not only to ourselves, but to all sentient beings. As for this purpose of overcoming suffering, discarding suffering completely, and achieving happiness at the ultimate happiness, then it comes down to what kind of method, because we are now in the process of taking all the difficulties, all the hard works, the difficulties in order to achieve these two purposes. We are now struggling in order to overcome suffering and struggling in order to achieve happiness. And within these two purposes, we have to remind ourselves that any kind of suffering that we have now, any kind of difficulty or hardship that we have now, basically it happens on the mind. And the same goes to happiness. Any kind of happiness, real and true happiness that we would like to achieve, it also on the basis of the mind. When we say happiness based, the main basis of the mind, does it mean that we don't have any happiness within the physical body? We still have, but it's not certain. For that physical happiness is not long lasting, is not true happiness. Any happiness that we like to achieve, it must be something on the mind. That's the true happiness. So based on the mind and mind itself, that comes down to how we think, how we see things, how we view the world. This is the true happiness that we would like to achieve.
근데 인바 손자 당아라주 디지시야데 삼로 당다지게 되는 두고 뒤잠바 다 데레게 삼로 당나 약슈 디지시야데 두비야게 삼로 당나 약슈데 가르세나 안에 자주지 셈다 돈이도게 따와시야 디니텔 디니 안에 용그리 예스다 디송그리
The statement or the fact that we state that happiness comes from the mind and how we think, how we see things, how we view the world. So it comes down on what kind of state of mind, what are the state of mind. And if we say state of mind, what are the best state of mind for achieving the ultimate happiness? And we have two mainly, the state of mind, which is called the spirit of enlightenment, and the state of mind, which is called the wisdom, understanding, or realizing emptiness directly. It comes down to these two state of mind for ultimate happiness.
지당 알아주 디지시야디 두비알라 탑 망보여리스 예나야 술 뒤비 예나 돈이도 베타와다 자주지 셈라 되는 연구리에서 디슈로 중진데 간데지레 빼든데지레 다베나 말아줘 저거도 뒤잠바다 칼라디 세베나 람사 핑기도와 어디나 지 말아줘 강행원에 숙청버체 용뒤잠바 갑둘라 핑기디 자주지 셈다 돈이도 베타와 냠네데 유비나 갑둘라 편 투구요레스
So for the achieving true happiness, or real happiness, or long-lasting happiness, and we say that actually there are a lot of methods. There are many methods, many ways to achieve happiness. And among the many methods that we say, the two main ones are the spirit of enlightenment and the wisdom directly realizing emptiness. And why? What are the reasons that we state these two to be the most important one? It's like an analogy or expression. When we are hungry, we need something in the stomach, we are hungry. What is the most beneficial? The quickest one to cure the hunger is by eating. So when we are suffering, when we are facing hardship or suffering, what is the most beneficial is by generating spirit of enlightenment and the wisdom directly realizing emptiness. This is the most beneficial at the time of hardship.
근데 이마 손자다 된데 동이도 베타와다 안에 자주지 셈 데라테네 안에 간드레스 안에 베 냥네지고래 간드레스 말아서 셈지 강에디 매버 수고 그래서 들리 슈비나 베나 동이도 베타와 데라테네 말아서 셈지 강에 매버 수야데 탑시 직 가려요레스 디자바 당아라서 셈나라 강에다 동이만 우용야 여러와다 수수 니주 담아다 용네 안에 나잘라 소고 온고 용고요레 강에 안에 대만이바 수수 레가지 만디고 되게냐 셈라 강에 용야요레 냐 콩돌라서 망보 용야지 여러와 어디디 삼로 간데시 땅고레스 디자마 동이도 왜 따오고네 안에 삼로지 땅바이나 다 된데게 셈라 강에 유베다 나 세야디 다베지 두미 시부 용기디 까와도와 다 고네 강고 봐줘 강바니 고 봐줘 봐 때네로와 다 수수 강틸니 세로 텔라바 가기니 야다 아주 지두버 우분으로 야 되네 가네마 도제세 가와 도제세 편에 녀야 매버지 통연데 셴네 딱이 나세 강에 시부 유주디 직괴 대지 추코메나라 추당물로거나 해요레서 추 시보야 코용게 될라 추당고 때슬로는 마 자도 그래라 어디나 시용 그래서 이 모이네 줄이다 나도 모이네 지 시보라 지다
So we mentioned that the wisdom directly realizing emptiness and the spirit of enlightenment being the two state of mind which is most beneficial when facing difficulty and hardship. Then the question is how does it go about? Why during the time of hardship the two state of mind can be very beneficial? Then the way to view this, one way is that when we see about the quality which is called the wisdom directly rising emptiness. So whenever we have a hardship or difficulty or suffering, for example, there are a lot of people, many people with many difficulty, many hardship. It can be a sickness, a disease. It can be unsuccessful in our endeavor, in our working, in our work. Or it can be when we feel unhappy and therefore we generate anger. And for that, after generating anger arises, then we feel unhappy and suffer. So any kind of hardship, any kind of suffering that we feel. And then during that particular moment, at that particular time, how should we think on it? And this is exactly the moment what we should utilize, applying the wisdom directly understanding emptiness, is by when you observe yourself, we observe ourselves during those difficulty and hardship. When we are suffering, the I is very big. So it feels a kind of feeling that, oh, I am suffering right now. The I is very big. Me is me, I am suffering. So I and me is very big at that time for the feeling. But then when we try to search who is suffering, you scan yourself from the top of the head right down to the bottom of the feet. You try and back and forth from the bottom of your feet, and you scan upward to your head. You try to search for the suffering I. Where is this I? Where is this I? And you go about like this. So when you suffer, it feels like this. The feeling of this I is very big. I am suffering now. The I is very large, it's very huge. It's like a giant. I am suffering. But when you try to search for the I, you scan yourself up and down, back and forth, from the top of the top of the head till the bottom of the feet, back and forth. When you do like this, it will naturally, the original very huge I, you try to search it. What happens is that you cannot find it. When you cannot find this giant I, and then the next thing that happening that the initial suffering is decreasing, is naturally decreasing, is lowering down, as if like boiling water, you put the cold water. When a boiling water on top of the fire is boiling, and you pour a cooling water, a very cold water, is calming down the heat of the boiling water. So this is how to go about when we say the state of mind, which is called wisdom, realizing emptiness, at the time that we feel we are suffering or facing difficulty.
다 된대다 내 락바디야 나마리스로 내 강바디야 나마리스 다 류지 차셰 수수수수수수네 봐 도체 제도데다 나시야디 큐네 니야요 말아 나 원나 나시야디 매버리 베스네 매버 말이 요리 아니 유단데 간데데스도 참 아니 민잠지 요리에서 그랬다 그래 주만나마 민잠지 그때 유지마다 다 나라도 나와나 신게 되려가 나지 요 말이스 이러.
So during the process that we try to apply the wisdom realizing emptiness in the practical meditation, when you try to search for the I, from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet, what happens is that is the I at the hand? No. Is the I on the feet? No. And then one by one, searching, scanning the parts of the body, we try to search for the I. We cannot find the I. Where's the I? Where's the suffering I? But then the other way goes around that, does the I completely does not exist? Also no. The I does exist. But the I does exist. How does it exist? The I existing only by labeling. We labeling or we naming it. This is the only way for the I to exist. It's not the I that we think it is the way it exists. For example, it can exist by itself without any causes and condition. This does not exist.
다 대답이 삼루단단디 공부시단디로 대지 수수 곰디리지 대지 매비나 람상용야지 요 말이지 삼루단가 제비네 템포르디 요 말이 삼루 템포르디 용토부 말이지
As for the way that we do the thinking, how we think, the state of mind, how we view the world, and utilizing these two main most beneficial state of mind, we have to be very careful to go about it, because it would depends on each of us here what level of practice that we have already achieved. Because for a very beginner, at a very basic beginner, when we try to do things like that, it cannot come about spontaneously, immediately at the very beginning phase, at the very beginning level. It's not like that. Even though you try to do it, something like this, it will not be a stable kind of practice.
다 디다베 다 동유도고 다외 냠네 유기지 미나 다 간디스 제비네 콩도 충아요리 콩도 충아요리 마제 충아요리 땡땡 유모요 그런 안에 동유도고 다외 냠네 제비 제구르디 마란도 통야데 딘리지 통야요리스.
Yes. But then again, it doesn't restrict us to discuss about it. For example, about the wisdom, understanding, emptiness, we can talk about it, discuss about it. One point we can discuss about the benefit, the advantage of applying this method. For example, it's very practical for someone who has already a practice, a very good practice of wisdom, understanding, emptiness, someone who can meditate, reflect upon it. We can see on the outside appearance, someone who has already the anger is very decreasing. He has not a lot of anger. And then for pride, someone who has a very good practice of sunyata, understanding sunyata, there is not so much pride. It is even something you can observe from the outside appearance.
다 디다베 동니 냠네 세고레 곰 자다데 마란주 단다 람존나송 제레야 마란주 곰지 거리 제제지 여러
Yes.
어디 갑도 야 안에 동니 곰나 간디 곰곰이 잔주지 셈시야데 곰디 간디 곰곰이 갑디디 안에 슈기인스로.
Yes. And then we mentioned about wisdom, understanding, emptiness, and the way to go about it by meditating about it. Actually, it's contained within the three principal qualities of the path, but we will see it later at the later part, because within the three principal qualities of the path, within this topic, it contains the topic about meditation. So for the meditation, it will discuss about wisdom, understanding, emptiness, how to meditate and how to do the process of meditating it. The same goes for the qualities, which is spirit of enlightenment. We will see at the later part of this Lamrim. We mentioned it now, but we will see it later. We will see how to meditate them, how to practice them.
동니 도구에 따와 딜라테네 당아란주 셈라 강에다 동이 흉을 땅하게 탑시 찍 어디리지리 단도 슈번하시 딜리지로 하다. 다니바데 장주지 셈라 때네 마란주에다 지 셈지 강에다 동이디 맵스야 비가리리스디 잠바. 당아란주 강에 체용디 잠바다 강에다 동이만 뭐지 체외 갑라야. 마랑게 강에디다 하장게 충주리에서로 마랑 미지기 강에리스. 대려라고 심지신 타협에다 베지 강에 들려쳐 가지고나 요리에서로 제가 나랑게 강에 대 용발라 때네 심지신지 동의다 강에 상마 디기 맵 스토바 디기 고쳐가지 용화를 쇼 단도 딜레 강에 쳐와다 딜레 동의 마와 용화를 쇼 삼비 딘레기 삼로 자체부 삼로 떡첨부 연례지 안에 공부지 시토바이나 말기다 동의다 강에 시고 지 여바디 안에 다비슈바나시다 추코메길이야 추정물루버시야디 땡땡 용어요레스 다비슈바나시 곰디 차고 그래 곰디 마차베나 람사 삼노 땅바 담지 용어요 말고 곰디 때 차베나 콜라치 칼랄로 마서 아주 좋아르지 때 니야였다.
So before, when we say that wisdom, understanding, emptiness is the state of mind to apply when we face hardship and difficulty, and the way to go about it is just being explained just now. There's one way to see about it. And then we also we see that there is the second state of mind, which is called spirit of enlightenment or the bodhicitta. So when we are facing difficulty and suffering, how to face this difficulty or suffering? by utilizing or generating the spirit of enlightenment. So when we are suffering, at the moment of suffering, we think to ourselves, okay, this is my suffering, I am suffering, but however, due to the bodhicitta, however, actually, this suffering of mine is relatively is quite small compared to others. So for example, I myself is one in person, all sentient beings is limitless in number. So one compared to limitless is nothing at all. So my suffering is a suffering of one person, of one being only. So, and then we can think that whatever, however much or big or small the suffering that I have now, be this by I having this suffering, it can help for other sentient beings to overcome their suffering. So it's like I'm doing my share of my suffering for the hope that all sentient beings can overcome their suffering. Not only this, we furthermore we pray, may the suffering of all sentient beings falls upon me. While I'm having this level of suffering for myself, why not just all the suffering of sentient beings, whatever they are suffering right now, just come upon me, let me take it now. And by thinking like this, what happens is that this is the part when we're already in the state of mind of the bodhicitta. So by imbuing that time, the suffering with bodhicitta, the minds become much more broader and much more stronger. And by thinking about this, actually what happens is that our suffering is lessened, is decreasing. And the way to is the decreasing and lessen is the same that when we think about the emptiness, it's like a boiling water and then you pour a cooling water. It immediately calms down the heat of the boiling water. This is when we utilize bodhicitta. So I'm suffering, may the suffering that I have now be the cure for other people's suffering, other sentiment suffering. And then furthermore, just the suffering that all of them befalls upon me, let me take it. Let me think, while I'm having this, why not all the suffering of our sentiments come to me? Let me have it. But then, of course, this the same with the sunyata wisdom. This would depends on the practice and then on the habit. For someone who has the good practice and the habit, he can apply this. It's not for a new beginners who can immediately apply this. It's not something like that. If we try to do it gradually, as if someone who can really have the taste of a good food. When he eat it, he really realize the taste. It has to be something, the practice must be a stable practice.
당아란저 남주 차 세야로 추보 피야로 다든데 소나마고 사고로 소나마고 사고요리라 안에 베미스비 야보 시고지리에서로 다 이나야 대삼기 지그레베서네 대삼기 지그요 말은 알아도 소디 가르 규지지고를 수도 있어 망한저 삼릉 냠바데 파 삼고 규그로 삼릉 냠바데 파 삼고 규야다 나란저 규지 견지 릭 뉴모베 릭디 파 맵스고로 이 소야기 안에 배제 탑 약슈디 까왈라 되는 거를 수도 있어 뭐 돈이도 따와다 장주 있음라 되는 거를 이니 매는 매도 미로 아래 다 간다 태과 쳔비 뭐니 쉬비 얘네 된대리
In general, when we try to practice the Dharma, be it we observe ourselves or we try to observe others, but mainly for ourselves in general, that we try to practice this by doing prostration, by doing offerings. In general, yes, we can say activities such as this can collect merit, even a huge merit, and it's very good. But if we ask again, is it only this is enough or sufficient? Then the answer is definitely no, because we must look into the core of the problem. The problem or the purpose, the main purpose now is to transform bad thoughts into good thoughts, to transform bad habits or bad karma into the good ones, the positive ones. Transforming here meaning that we have to eradicate all based from the root cause, which is the kleshas. And eradicating all the roots of the kilesas, we have to rely on the method And the method, none other, we don't have any other method. This is the only method. The method, none other than the wisdom, realizing emptiness, and the spirit of enlightenment. These two qualities within the Mahayana vehicle, the Mahayana practice, is inevitable, is something that we have go through these two qualities for a Mahayana practice.
Angarazo jida nyamne mambu naya yorwa. Kandun la soba mambu jiya yordi. Yina su dubi na kunyi na la dutubi na. Nadi yabu yungu yores. Yiri. Yende yimba sonza tantan geche bu jeje da shuyadi. Yumze ende yins.
And furthermore, for the ones us here now, or you all here, we try to practice the spiritual dharma, the dharma. And by practicing the dharma, most of you have a lot of prayers, such as prayers that to recite, the recitation. It's very good. It's very good. But on top of that, along with this practice of frustration, offerings, and saying our prayers, we have to have these two state of mind. This is the reason why we state these two state of mind, the wisdom realizing emptiness, and then the spirit of enlightenment is very important.
Dita be chanju ji semda ane tongi to be tawala koa da tongi ngo sumdo tok ma thu be inaya tongi ngo ne ma to be inaya tongi la koa cha be ina tongi sia de kan lui me ti tda ya bu je ha go chanju ji sem sia de ane gyula ma ji be inaya chanju ji sem sia de kan de me ji ya bu je ha go de ko ba de nam ju ne de si su su nyam ne de ji yo be ina da tin de yo gen gi kan sa ji de shi du 당아도 참고 시기 자녀로 돼요 말아. 다 시유가라. 어떤데 지금 삼로 땅 투비권의 12나 개와 정말야 밀리 상부지 안에 배 캡좀요 말했은 거 같아.
Lasso. So for the practice, for the wisdom, understanding, emptiness, and the spirit of enlightenment, even though, for example, for wisdom realizing emptiness directly, even though it's not the real wisdom, it's not the real wisdom understanding directly emptiness. But then for this practice, for the state of mind, we can try at any level, we can try to first understand about it, to study about it, to understand the meaning about it. Even though it's not a true wisdom that we try to generate, but we understand, oh, this is called wisdom, understanding emptiness. This is what we can try to do. And the same goes to spirit of enlightenment. Even though we don't have the true bodhicitta, we haven't have the generating the true bodhicitta, but still we can learn about it. What is bodhicitta? How to generate bodhicitta? And for this type of person, suppose someone, us here or you here, someone who has a kind of somewhere in between and the practice of these two qualities. Someone who tries to understand about wisdom and bodhicitta, someone who tries to understand how to go about it, even not through wisdom, even not through bodhicitta, someone who tries to and put effort it says that it is explained that during at the time of dying, near the process of dying and death itself, for sure we are going to die. Nobody is going to stay forever, so we are going to die. At the time of death, if we can generate these two qualities, based on the practice, whatever practice that we could generate for the wisdom and then the bodhicitta, it is explained that it is for sure for this person to be able to be reborn again as a human being. It is no doubt that this person can be reborn again as a human being.
나다기 아주 다른 쇼거기다 무티는 쉬우인세 다른 쇼거기다 말한 남성 거주로 지다 남성디 안에 주주직을 제시 잡이네 찬도야 요리 그런 유님도 요 말아 요거 이제비는 주주직을 살아야 요리 예버전에는 님망보 뒤에 제시전에 자야요 봐 다워 든지리 드네 마송자 뒤주다 흉바지가 안에 만 제시 피고 있어요.
So This morning, we have started the explanation based on the three qualities of the part. Now we can continue based on the three principal qualities of the part. As for this text that we are about to continue from this point at this session, for this text itself, if you can see, based on the verses, they are relatively short. It's not too lengthy. They, based on the verses, is relatively short. On the papers, it's just a few pages. So for this relative short, which is called the three principal qualities of the part, if we would like to, all these verses can be explained within the duration of 1 hour. Suppose if we like to, it will be completed by 1 hour's time. However, if these three principal qualities of the part, the verses by Rinpoche, is to be explained thoroughly, it can take many days. So during this course, we have the timetable and the schedule being arranged. So the way we go about this text is to be adjusted with how many days and times and session we have.
다른 식으로 말하는 신장대다 지준라만 남라 차체로서야 디 카두디 아주 제시 필요. 다 디가블야다 신이 든지 땡고 요래서다 신이 든지 거때 다른 식으로 쉬어와. 다 다가나 신이다 말아줘다 기위 신이 있어야 돼. 안에 숭주 슈바잠기 안에 기위 신이 차게 말해서야 찍지. 나 숭주 켜는 마슈네야 기위 신이 차게 레서야 찍지. 나도 수익 개발대 야구 청구로. 다른 쉬다 다른 식으로 쉬사이. 양결자도 야 이간을 대시 양결지 규비스.
Yes. So we have started the explanation on the three principal qualities of the part this morning. Based on the first line, we started from the very first line, homage to the venerable spiritual masters. And for this explanation have been elaborated. And within this line contains the practice of relying upon a spiritual masters. This already being explained also this morning. And relying upon a spiritual masters, we come to the term what is called spiritual masters. So this morning we mentioned that the explanation given that even though someone received teaching, a lot of teaching from a person, doesn't necessarily means that a teacher-disciple, a guru-disciple relationship established. That's one. And then we also mentioned that even though no teaching whatsoever, haven't received any teaching, but a person can rely upon a master's, a relationship can be established. This we mentioned in the session this morning. So for this, we would like to explain a little bit further and elaborate. Because you already mentioned, it's better we try to say thoroughly what is meant when we state like that.
다 제상 알아줘 숭주 현의 슈 만용의 이나야 라마 디다데 아주 라마 차그리 있어야지 알아주고 주비 라마도서다 말아줘 숭중을 좀 마슈이네 수주 라마 차그리 있어야지 디슈로.
Yes.
다 대담도 마세야 숭주 현의 마슈비나냐 라마 차야 신다 찍가려 요르스 디자마. 다 당분에 숭주 마슈면에 라마 디제 라마델라 차세 차퓨 제다퓨 계랑에 라마나로나 세야도 슈비나 다 숭주 켜내나요 말이스 수수이 슈요 말에 라메나요 말 이나야 라마도 로멘데와 차사리 찍디리.
So someone who hasn't received any teaching whatsoever, and then the relationship of the guru-disciple established, how to go about this. For this is very clear when we see the lineage masters. So they are lineage masters. For the lineage masters, although we haven't received the teaching directly, but they are lineage masters. So without receiving teaching directly, the lineage masters is our masters. So without receiving teachings, this one way we can understand this. The other way is that there is no teaching being received. Then the way is that the person first meet with the person. He doesn't receive teaching, but he meet the person first, and then he prostrate to the person. He, for example, in the Tibetan tradition, he offers the kata, the white scarf, but no teaching. From the master side, he doesn't give any teaching. From the disciple side, he doesn't request any teaching. just meeting, prostrating, offering the kata, but the disciple decide that please you become my master. This already established. This is one way we can say without receiving any teaching, a relationship of the guru disciple can be established.
가다디다 냐마다디 야가도 가다지다 유주마리로 지다자 가다디 비빌루스로
Yes.
간다르다 이게 나로나스다 야차 퓨디 유비는 어디니 기기기로 차도거로.
Yes. So the tradition of offering kata to a person and then saying that please become master, establishing the relationship of the guru disciple by offering kata, this does not goes back to India's time and the Buddha's time in the India. They don't use the kata. This only happens during the Tibetan times. So Tibetan's disciples and Tibetan's master, they are establishing it, one by prostrating, the other one is by offering the kata. So you establish it by deciding and you offer the kata. This is a token, a gesture.
어딘데래 만조 참마딘데래다 나도 도시 용벌이다 간다르 동조 마시면에 안에 라마제 안에 차퓨 안에 배 계랑에 기계나로나서 워도 쉬고 거라 이게 또 어딘데래
Rela,
별이네 자갈리다가라로 만조
Manso.
만조스는 계란저 키고 내고 말
Yes.
앞에는 만조 잡아도서 이메이나로 다 댄스칼라다 배 롬년남녀들도 이메이나 비디기게디 담보된 거라 비디기게디 이게 비디만한 거라 비디기게 제거로 비디기게 제 안에 계란알 비디나로나스 안에 어두야 쉬 안에 차피 두지고 이 비디 쉬 차비 제일 기게 된게 요 말이
Yes. So the way that being explained just now is exactly what I experienced. This is the way I did it. This is the way that is happening. So for certain master, even though not yet receiving any teachings, we go to this master. First, we have to meet the person. First, we meet him, the guru, and then we prostrate, and then we offer the kata, then becomes the masters. Decide and already establish the masters. This is what naturally happens. For example, for the monks have what they call the tutor, the class tutor, the teacher of the class tutor, Piti Gegen. So for them, for us, when we meet, first of all, we must meet the tutor class, the tutor of the class, without receiving any teaching. Initially, we first have to meet the teacher and we prostrate and we offer the kata, and then after that only we receive the teaching. Initially, we haven't received any teaching. Already, we establish the master and disciple relation. This is something that can happen. That this already happened.
어딘데로 다 지당 알아서 라마스야디 가제 마와유네 야고요레스 버다 수술라 라마 가제 마와유네 야고요레스 금제디 가르에스도 자만 알아서 깨와치마 안에 깨와 양잘령 거로 이디 라마 망고 매비나 라마 찍니마도 매비나 대단 렌데 야고 마중이나 안에 라마 신다 제투고 말레스 라마 망보 여비나 라마 찍마 제비네 찍 제투그리 찍마 제비네 찍 제투그리 이네 마송자 라마 춘데 샤야디 망나 야그레스 제단데리
In the practice of relying upon a spiritual masters, and in terms of numbers, there is one principle here in this practice that the guidance is that the more the better. If someone who can have a lot of the spiritual masters is better, even the more the better. And for this, we have the reason for it, because the purpose of us meeting a spiritual master in this life is to continue in the next life. So in the continue to the next life, if we do not have many spiritual masters, we have only just limited, just one or two maximum. So within this one or just two master within this life, if suppose within this life we do not practice properly, we do not have a strong connection with these masters, then by the next life, it's difficult for us to meet again with this one or just two masters that we have. It will be different if we have a lot of masters, many masters. So within this life, we have a lot of masters, many masters. For the next life, if suppose we are not successful in meeting these masters, there will be the next one. If suppose the next one is connection not so strong, there will be another one, and so forth. So in general, we can say the more the better. If we can have many spiritual masters, this is in general.
다 덴데임바 손자 빼나 제르무치 미나야다 라마 자당압 줄하지 요리 덴데 숨고도와 제자다 간다르 뭔지 기부다 받어서 답에 망쳐와다 라마 망부 쉬우지 땡거도 경제직 디리스.
As for this, of course, we have an example for this, a real example. We just mentioned Je Rinpoche, Tsongkhapa, Lama Tsongkhapa, Je Rinpoche. Within his biography, it is mentioned that Je Rinpoche has more than 150 spiritual masters. And by this, we can also observe many others great spiritual masters in the past, in the previous period. For them, most of them has a lot of spiritual masters. Why? The reason we have just seen, the one being elaborated just now.
다 덴데 라마 망부 때나 야부도 시버리데 이나야 띵주 야부 고고요냐 라마 때나데 야부 마중이나야 라마 용나 야거리 가르세나 라마 망부제 아네 델레 수시 띵주 야부 마중이나 가제 마와이나 디주기다 녀버쳐요로 띵주 야부 중보이나 라마 망부이나 야고요 야 지 띵주 야고시라 디면은 라마 용나 야거리 다 덴데.
Yes. When we would like to practice this guidance, which is called the more the better in terms of the number of the spiritual masters, of course, other than just numbers, we have to have a good practice of relying upon the spiritual masters. It's a very stable practice of relying upon the masters. If suppose one cannot do the practice of relying properly, then it's better to have lesser. So it's the other way around. If you cannot rely properly, then the guidance should be you have fewer or lesser. So if in terms of numbers, when we say that it's the more the better, it will also goes hand in hand with how we rely upon spiritual masters. If suppose we have many spiritual masters, then we cannot rely properly. Then what we do is just collecting bad karma and then transgression or faults. So if we cannot do a reliance properly, then the guidance is the lesser the better.
다 덴데 임바 손자다 라마 띵주시야디 간다리 신이 띵주시야디 게체버리 세다 망부지 쉬브라다 다 쉬야디 가르스디 잠바 싸워르데다 람게 싸워르디 신이 띵주라 라레바리에스 신이 띵주 야고 중나 가리나 야고 용고레스디 쉬브라 다 페나 덴데지로다 지당 알아서 남유인 베이나 신이 띵주 야고 중바이나 마란조 녜손래 계약이 답에지 뒷받침부지 유비나야 신이 든지 야부 중에 규진라 때는 마란조 답에지 내나자 충중지기냐 녜손래 계약이 규칙 그래서 뒷받침부대 맵 차야로 대단도 마세 니람 때 독자를 충중지 땅발라 때는 그냥 뭔지 답에지 녜손래 계약 뒷받침부대 맵 차야 되는 용어도 이 신이 든지라 때는 용어래서 근데 이마 손자다 신이 든지셔야 돼
So up till now, we have mentioned that the practice of relying upon a spiritual master is very important, and we have mentioned this again and again. It's quite elaborated. We have been discussing about this from the previous time until up to this point, emphasizing the importance of relying upon a spiritual masters. And for this, we can give an analogy or explanation. So basically, the importance of relying upon spiritual masters, whatever good qualities that we would like to achieve, depends on how we rely upon a spiritual master. It depends whether or not we have one, and depends on how we rely properly on the spiritual masters. Because for a good practice of relying upon a spiritual masters, when someone has a very bad, heavy bad karma, the ones that can cause him to fall into the lower rebirths in the next life, this person, based on a very good practice of relying upon a spiritual masters, the very heavy bad karma can be remedied by just, for example, having a small sickness. So it's just like a remedy, because the power of relying upon a spiritual master carries a very good karma and heavy good karma. It can be a substitute or remedy the very heavy bad karma causing someone to reborn in the lower realms, to be just like having to be substituted in the form of small sickness. And other types of remedial is just like when we're having bad dreams. When we have a frightening or bad dreams, these bad dreams is actually a very heavy karma to fall into lower rebirths. And what we have is just only a small bad dreams. How to do this? Because this is the power of the relying upon spiritual master. Only by relying upon spiritual master, this condition can happen.
다 데이터베이스 신이 되지 개첨부 임바디 다需要 경진 직디 가르칠 수도 있어 봐. 다 되네 노나 신이 되지 노나 상만 노도 그래 다 간다. 신이 되지네 야고지 중부에는 상만 야고지 진도야지 요. 제자디 개첨부 임바 총장 어디 쉬고요. 배난 정말로만 종가바 첨배 연대 신준만의 당번은 연대 군지 신주 진지지 수지 땜발람지 싸워리스 숨도 하나 남손 나로래 지zel라마 남라 차서를 당번에 뒤송도 어디 김제들 유튜브를
So over and over, as you know, and we try to do here over and over, we say that relying upon a spiritual master is very important. One way to understand this is very practical. If we can do this, for example, if we do this wrongly, then everything else will be done wrongly. If we do this practice of relying upon spiritual master wrongly, then all other practice goes wrong. If we do this one practice properly, correctly, then all the other practice will be proper, will be incorrect. We'll do it properly and correctly as well. So based on this one practice, it will determine all the other practice. This is why we state this is very important. And for this reason, the great Lama Je Tsongkhapa, the great yogi Tsongkhapa, in the foundation of all excellence, in the very first line, he stated that having well understood that the kind masters is the foundation of all excellence. If we do this one wrongly, everything else goes wrong. If we do this one properly, correctly, everything else goes properly, everything else goes correctly. Having well understood that the kind master is the foundation of excellence, in the foundation of excellence, the first line, this is the same exactly in the three principal qualities of the path. First line, Je Rinpoche states, homage to the venerable spiritual masters. This is emphasizing the importance of relying upon the spiritual masters.
신이 된줄 거르다 대세자 뒤상마다 원에 대해서 탐토머리 차고 있어요. 무슨 소리 차고 있어요. 기다들으래.
I hope that this doesn't confuse you about the explanation of the relying upon spiritual master, but in general, what can be explained about it already just explained. I hope it doesn't confuse you.
신이 된줄 거르성들 잠마다 송주의 당부를 디다 또 개체부 이마 송자 신이 된줄 거르 대세 피고요. 대세 피디 잠을 로마도서에다 당분에 깔레르지 카 아니 니 그게 라메다 깔레시고 잡자마 송거리디 로마도서 니 그 깁상 제대로 거르다.
So for the practice of relying upon the spiritual masters, because of the utmost importance, is put at the very first topic. But then how I observe this, I think I put great effort in explaining this, or in general, all the spiritual master put great effort in explaining this. But on the side of the listeners, perhaps the listeners, for them it's difficult And then for them, this is causing sleepiness, drowsiness.
지단 된들이다. 메카시게 된들. 남윤이 훈의 기부시라면 돼서 순절이니디 기부시부터 세요. 오늘
This is what happens normally. There's normally happenings in this kind of situation, whereby that in normal condition, a person cannot sleep well. He doesn't sleep well or sleep happily. But during Dharma session, he can sleep very well and very happily.
된들이. 된들이 뭐 손자다. 나다 지존 라마남라 차셀로 세야 되기다. 된다디다. 된들이 슈투비스.
And for this is what we basically try to cover for the first line, homage to the venerable spiritual masters.
다디 제레야 다디리. 니바 좀바 담자와서야 되리다. 니바 좀바 담자와서야 되기다. sabje di dubi zawadi yawe songrab kunji ningbe tuens kese tamba namji ngakwe lam kende tato namji jungo de sidanu shi dagi shebar chas wadi sungre nilo wadi chisungjen.
And we go through this the three principal qualities of the path based on the outline. The first outline has been explained. We come to the second outline. The second outline corresponds to the first verse, and for the first verse, please observe based on the text, following the text, when Chen Rinpoche says, the essential meaning of all the conquerors' teachings, the paths praised by the sublime conquerors and their spiritual children, the gateway for the fortunate ones desiring liberation, I shall explain as well as I can.
식당부터기 된다데 교회 송랍군이 닝베 된시야데 이 된다데 가르서는 교회 송랍군 교회 송랍시야 되다 간다 산제 줌네디 송셰비 취주 공부 제지 시동을 해줘라 이 교회 송랍디 탐직이 닝보르데 가르스디서 뭐 닝보르데 닌조레스 버다 간다 닌조 교회 송랍군이 닝베 된시야 돼 식당부터기 람조 남송 나로네 닌조시야 돼 말이다.
And for this first verse, let's go through it line by line. And for the first line, the essential meaning of all the conqueror's teachings. So this year, when we say the conqueror's teachings, is referring to the Buddha's teachings. And the Buddha's teachings, we mentioned before, it covers what is called traditionally as 84,000 hips of the Dharma. And then for the 84,000 hips of the Dharma, referring to the limitless number of the Dharma, teaching taught by the Buddha, the essential meaning here in the very first line here is referring to the qualities of what is called renunciation.
Yes, Dambanam Yingakwe Lam Siatiro. That the Ane Paritemor cities about the Janjuji Semtengores. Jida Yawe Sungle Tumbe, yes, Dambanam Yingakwe Lam Kunzo Janjuji Sem Siade. Nam Yung Arazo Janjuji Sem Siadi, Kunzo Janjuji Sem Siadire. Jidani Javian Kunzo Janjuji Sem Siadita, the Nam Janjuji Sem Si Nishiwari. Yene Tandang Arazo Lamje to Namsung Siadi Kablaya Ane Janjuji Sem Jigdua, the Kunzo Janjuji Sem Siad. The Nan Janjuji Sem Siadi Gares and Tonyum Tumdo Dogwe Lamdirida. Tonyum Tumdo Dogo Logero. What the lot the Nam Janjuji Sem Sigor.
So what is chick then give me the control chang sem dan don dang chang sem di. Control chang sem dan don dang chang sem di.
Kunzob Siajira.
Yeah.
Kunzob Lo Kunzuba Siajira. Kunzu Temba Siajira. Kepenaran concept.
Conceptual.
Yeah. Kepenaran Tertingi Siajira.
Tertingi ho.
Otagandar de Kunzo Janjuji Sem Siadu. Tangode. Nibade Tönam Janjuji Sem Siad. The Tönam Janjuji Sem Siade Seshi Shabayana. Pena Tonyum Sumdo Lamdiri. Kunzo Janjuji Sem di Shabana Tanang Azunamji Sumdeageta Janjuji Sem Jigara. What it is?
The second line, when it says the paths praised by the sublime conquerors and their spiritual children, this is referring to the qualities of the three principal qualities of the path. It's referring to the spirit of enlightenment or the bodhicitta. And in this case, in the context of the three principles of the path, for the bodhicitta itself, we can differentiate between the two types of bodhicitta, the conceptual bodhicitta and the highest bodhicitta. And between the two, for the highest bodhicitta is the one that is imbued with the wisdom, understanding, emptiness directly. And in this context, in the three principles of the path, when the second line referring to the bodhicitta or the spirit of enlightenment is referring to the first type, the conceptual bodhicitta.
다 근데 다들 남기 중고 대세야 되기 안에 동의도비 따와디 땡겨야다. 이까 내리스디 삼바 안에 뒤자 깨와단데 말이로. 뒤자 깨와다데 말 안에 파르바 되베다 된데 안에 뒤자 되라로. 아 다들 남기 중고 양답이 따와 이래. 근데 다들 남기 중고 대세 중고세야 돼 안에 양답이 따와래 가다. 동의도비 따와디.
And then the third line within the first verse, the gateway for the fortunate ones desiring liberation. This is referring to the qualities which is called, there is a term for this which is called excellent view, which excellent view is referring to the wisdom directly understanding or realizing emptiness. So here, when I say gateway, it's referring to the qualities, because for the ones desiring liberation, we have to overcome the cause, and the cause of the affliction can only be overcome with the wisdom directly rising emptiness. So the gateway here is that these qualities, the third qualities.
지다니시 다게 시아바르자 시디자마 안에 장원라마 종가바 쳔베 코랑게 차우 뭐뭔가 왔다고 해서지요로 어 데라 소베다 겐den기 뒤자 용라야 안에 수수 뒤질로다 참베까제 투두기 안에 냠네 지투바 지 안에 제로 산다고 랑이기 안에 시에게 인이세들이 지다니시 다게 시아바르자
Di Rinpoche di Sabo Tisu
사원가 왔다고
Sawang.
사원가 왔다고 해서지요리 제르미지 인자리 나가네
Yes.
와델라 제르미지 디 나로
Mm.
나다 람존 낭세 뒤자 쪼디 코네
Person. And the last line within the first verse, when Rinpoche state, I shall explain as well as I can. Actually, Rinpoche is referring to the one, to the specific disciple that is directing this text, which is Sawo Ngawang Drakpa, is actually a relative of Rinpoche himself. So when he say, I shall explain as well as I can, he's stating this by referring to this Sawo Ngawang Drakpa, his disciple. I will try as much as I could, as best as I could, in order to explain this to you. So this is meant by the last line, I shall explain as well as I can.
자산로 여디 디마라 아기 주주디 마라
Mare di Susibare.
이렇습니다. 다 단다 자외 송라 분이 닝베데 계사 담반남 영마벨랑 제데 타데남이 중에 지다니시 다게 시아바르자 세야디 다 디나로 람존 남촌 상마데 뒤차리다.
And we try to see, observe this very verse, first verse, you try to read together in the text, the essential meaning of all the conquerors' teachings, the paths praised by the sublime conquerors and their spiritual children, the gateway for the fortunate ones desiring liberation. I shall explain as well as I can. Within this one first verse, actually all the qualities is contained inside. We say there is a three qualities, three principal qualities, is all condensed or contained within this very first verse.
다 지다 자외 송라 분이 닝베 되시야디 가두델레 닌종시야디 안데 땡거 요레스 쉬우로 다 지다 닌종 월레 레그레 장주지 셈기 고레 월레 요레 동니도베 따웨 고레 월레 요레로 이나야 다데 가두데 도디지 모두 쉬우이스.
So the first line, when we say that the essential meaning of all the conquerors' teachings is referring to the qualities of renunciation. The second line is referring to the qualities which is called the spirit of enlightenment. The third line corresponds to the qualities of the excellent view. for each of these principal qualities, we can see there are the elaboration for each of these qualities. For the renunciation, it will be stated in the below verses. The same will goes to the spirit of enlightenment and also for the wisdom realizing emptiness. It will be mentioned again and elaborated again in the next verses.
인중세야 돼 지다 간데지라 인중세 라고 요리스나 코알랑 예버 중앙아시야다 코알랑 예버 중앙아시야 돼 된다 가리 코알라 교셰기바 코알라 교와기바 세저라 CTC저라 코알라 교 다디 된다데 간데리스디 좀 말아줘 레뇽 코알라 기바 이나서 레다 뉴몽 코알라 기 친제려야 류 상보다 하이보다 보모세야 돼류 상보 기지로 연대지 렘버 이나에 나도 다 벤조르 쳔보 안에베 가르소레 남세기부 직딘디간라야 벤조 쳔슈디 남세기부시들이 와든레지 벤조 쳔보 요나에 라도 양면하다 코르 상보 콜루주의 계부 콜루주의 계부시야디 다베 코르망부 시우저레 거랑다 거랑 빈자 팜 가르 빈자라 소바 되는 안에디 가르소레 륜신 된데다 륜보다다 망부지 여러 거랑 코르 시부지 요리스. 다 이마이나야 다 레뇽 그 코알레 깨바 이바 순자 다가라 동이데 다가라 요리. 다가라 코알레 타르 요마르와 코알레 타르 메바 이바 순자 동이 다가라 요리스. 인데 인데 잠바 다 간다레 닝부 민두세 다 간다레 루상볼 해 보다 보면 룰렘바이나야다 벤조 쳔보 남세기 부이 깨왈렘바이나야다 코르상보 안에 콜로주이 깨보다 레바이나 다가라 동이디 다가라 뇽고도 제다 델레 동이 데달레 저 하르바직 호구구도 삼베다 데레기 삼르지 여비나 어디 민라 가르 닌존세 거레스.
So there is a qualities which is called renunciation. And how do we understand about renunciation? So renunciation basically is that we want to renounce from samsara or cyclic existence. And what is this qualities which is renouncing the samsara or cyclic existence? It is a feeling of feeling sad. We are feeling sad and discouraged about cyclic existence. And why we should be sad? Because even though that we are reborn in the samsara, the main reason being the karma and the kleshas, the karma and also the afflictive views. Because of these two main reasons, now we are in the cyclic existence. Even though we have a very good body, such as the bodies of the gods, there are certain type of gods. We have a physical body is very beautiful, very appealing. Even though we have a lot of material possession, there are certain type of gods who is very renowned to have the biggest material possession, the largest or biggest material possessions among the gods. He is the richest one. Even though we are born in the types of gods, we have an entourage such as a king entourage. So the samsara's way of doing is that even though we have this kind of entourage with all the families members, the relatives, the entourage, the one who is loyal to you with a great entourage, all of these still contain suffering. So a feeling that even though that we have all the greatness of the samsara, that we want to get out of it, we want to be free from it. This is called renouncing. Why? Because even though we have the greatest body appearance, physical appearance such as the gods, or the greatest material possessions, or the greatest entourage that we could imagine that one person can have, all of this still contains nothing. It's meaningless, it's nothing. It doesn't have any true meaning in it. So in order to be free from that, it's just all of them only contain suffering. In order to be free from that, we say that we would like to renounce them in order to achieve liberation. Someone who has this kind of thought is said to have a renunciation.
예절에야다 심지에 저러다 단다 장주기 심시야 돼. 다 장주기 심시야 돼. 간대지 레시도 있잖아. 다 장주기 심시야 돼다 지 말아줘 고대보를 쉐베나 세보 상보지. 세버 상보세 답변은 내로 되지지로 아니 딜레마 십자와다는 리로
Yes. So we have just seen what is meant by renunciation. After that, there is quality which is called the spirit of enlightenment. In Sanskrit, it's called bodhicitta. And for the spirit of enlightenment of bodhicitta, how we understand this? In one way to understand bodhicitta in the most simplest form, in the most practical term, in the most simplest term, a bodhicitta is a kind heart. This is the very basic or simplest way you want to understand bodhicitta. It's simply a kind heart.
다 된대 장주 있음데 파다 십자로 자로 파 디지도 뭐네디 장주 있음시야 돼 간주지리세요 여러 다 간다래 심지 탐제 동의면 되어봐다 대화 되어봐대 말하다 지부 직자리샤스 간다래 수수 동의면 되어봐다 대화 되어봐나시 심지 탐제 동의면 되어봐다 대화 되어봐 샤다리샤 된대인 바 송상 심지 탐제 동의세야다 대화 토약의 시도 뇌산지 고반 토바 지기니 예체도 안에 배지 예 초사 지바 장기 인상배 되르게 삼로들라 안에 자주 있으면 시고야레스
So bodhicitta being a kind heart, how to understand this kind heart? Because there is a very deep explanation for the bodhicitta itself. And by this context, if we try to see it now, so bodhicitta basically, when we think to ourselves, just like myself, I do not wish to suffer. And then just like myself, I want happiness. The same applies for all sentient beings. So all sentient beings and myself, all of us, we do not want suffering. We would like to have happiness. And based on this principle, then in order to overcome all sufferings, myself and all sentient beings, in order to achieve ultimate happiness, myself and all sentient beings, I need to achieve these two purposes can only be achieved. Therefore, I need to achieve Buddhahood. And in order to achieve Buddhahood, I will conduct myself in the merit accumulation and then the purification of the bad karma, the two things that we need to do, the task. And in order to do this, these two tasks that I would like to achieve Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, this is bodhicitta.
나디 도티지 되리지로 아니 동니도에 따와서야 돼 간디지리스나 나 동니도에 따와서 라고래 동니도에 로에 라고래 동니도에 셰라비안 라고래 다 간다리 개벌서 거예요 말 간다자다 동니도에 따와서야 돼 간디지리스 되잖아 다다 말아도 지딘지 감기다 뇌다 주세저라 뇌 지딘다 주 심진도 좀 아주 지금 난 거여러 아주 지금 라면다 지나여러 나윤디 잠바 말아도 낭바나 시피기 두 삼산르지 요래다 말아도 낭올라 된대 요래 이나야 되응을 줄라 말아도 나와나 신지 싸와니네요 말레스 된대지 매바데 된대지 매바데 모숨도 또고 로텔라야 안나 동이도 로세라고 그러다 간다
감디누 당주디 가리노 가리주
아니 뇌주세데 뇌세야데 지딘지 감 단단한저 리다 캉발라서 버직도 와
러스
근데 자불링 거라다 뇌세야데 되리 뇌 지딘세야데
러스
주 심진세야데 자불링 데라 손에 지긴다 알아도 심진망고 여러 어델라 주 심진세 버
러스
아나 심진 라멘다 지 나도난 거와 안에 더와지 캉발라 소고 리라 소고다 베지 망보지 나도 지금 난 거도 와 나란저 삼리나라 간데요리 시디자바 비게 직수 나윤데 자바 수수나만나 신원에 요리 상고요라다 뭐네 당내데 뭐니 줄라 수수나와나시 수수 총반나시 버길이 된대지 요 말이 된대지 매바 임바 손자 대 매바데 모숨도 똑소나 된대 로데라 가리 돈이 모숨도 더로 돈이도 그 다와서 되리스
러스 So we have just seen briefly what is meant by renunciation and bodhicitta. Now comes the third one. So for this one, actually there are several terms. They are referring to the same qualities. The terms, for example, the excellent view, the mind understanding emptiness, the wisdom realizing emptiness. There can be several terms all referring to the same qualities. The wisdom and realizing emptiness, understanding emptiness, the mind understanding emptiness, the view understanding emptiness. And for this, how we try to understand this in brief. So basically, what we perceive in this world, forever, for example, we imagine this world, we see this world with all the, for example, this world, when we think about this world, or the place with the mountain, or this place with the continent, the mountain, whatever shape and form in this world, then we imagine, we say this is the world, along with whatever inside the world. So inside the world, including the beings, the sentient beings, for example, the human, the animals. So whatever we could think that constitute a world. So when you say a world, you imagine, oh, the world is like this, the shape and form with mountains, rivers, etc., with the ocean. And within this mountain and within this ocean live all the beings inside, the humans, the everything that could live in a world. When we think about it, at the back of our mind, we think that exists something real within this world. So example, the mountain exists the real mountain that can stand by itself, the real river, etc. And also the beings, when imagine the world with the human, for example, we imagine that there's a real human being that constitute what is called a world. And we imagine it to be real, to be existing by themselves. Well, in fact, in reality, it doesn't exist. They don't exist the way that we imagine them to be existing. And when we understand this not existing by using the wisdom directly, understanding their non-existence, this is what is called the view understanding emptiness directly.
디 중재가 내리서 뒤잖아. 배를 차샤비나 야보다 두부세야 된 개월이죠. 야가 되다 두고 인생 말에 두고디 야가 인생 말에 두고다 야가니 개월와. 다 이나야 낭뒤자 뭐 배를 차샤비나. 말라 가부지기 미지 이메나 나 미대에서 야고 통고열이다. 말라 미가와 지기기 미지기나 나 두자 통고열이다. 다 두자 통미 미디기다 야부 통미 민니기다 뒤자 뭐 지기 야가 통고리 지기 두자 통고리 나 미지기리다. 야부 통미디기 통반하신 나 야부를 배서나 랍투 말아. 두자 통미디기 통반하신 나 두자를 배서나 냐에 디 랍투 미도가. 때와 되나 시래. 나도는 나와나 시요 말이다 간다. 된다 도도디.
So the reason that we say that they don't exist by themselves, what is the reason for this? That we can give a simple syllogism of analogy for something. For example, if we say something is good, then it means that the opposite of good is being bad. So it's opposite. The same way it goes around. If we say something is bad, then the opposite of bad is good. So the two of them being the opposite between each other. But in this case, there is no certainty. If we talk about emptiness of it, there is no certainty. Being good must be opposite of bad. And for this, the example is very practical, it's very clear. For someone who, for example, who likes me, then this person will say, I am a good person. I am a good person. For someone who doesn't like me, and this person will say, I'm not a good person, I'm a bad person. So for the person who likes me and say that I'm a good person, is that a real essence in the goodness that he say there's a good? Not necessarily. There's a real good here? Not necessarily. Why? Because he likes the person, he says good. For someone who doesn't really liking and then saying it's a bad person, there's a true badness that is within the bad that he say? Not necessarily. It's not a real good, it's not a real bad. And how many person are we talking? Just one person. This one person can have for someone who likes him to become a good, for someone doesn't like him, become a bad, but we're talking about one person. So in this way, that is only because based on the perception, and if we perceive it as it is, it's not true, it's not real. What we perceive as good, it doesn't necessarily be good. What we perceive as bad doesn't necessarily bad. In short, this is the way how we try to explain the excellent view, the wisdom realizing emptiness.
나 내가 빼도 르지 시고요로. 빼리 차셔나 하지로. 미 이다숨이라고 그러다. 로. 하지 미지 이다숨 이스. 다 빼셔고래 돼. 슈퍼루강 요리돼. 로. 사두 망고 아일. 나 콘도 송게 따윤 늦자마. 하이 따윤 늦자마 하게 가르통 거를 유지 통거. 하이 유지 통거. 미득이 가르통 거를 디 포버 디나로리아 유버디 추 통거요. 그 추레 삼 통거요다. 이다득이 가르통 거였으니 나 통거. 맞아 나나요로. 나나디 통거요. 다수 데버레 수 마데버레다. 콘도 찌기니다 베 나레세 그래. 나에 통수세 그러. 미득이는 추레세 그래. 추피기다가나 두세 그래. 하득이 안에 베지 유지레세 그래. 내 통거 두세 그러. 예상 거 수지 통번하시 요마라. 어디 나시래 말아. 나와 나시 요마래.
So another example that we can give here to present here in this context, for example, you imagine on the altar is a bowl of water. So a bowl of water. So we have three beings, being the God and the human and the hungry ghost. So a bowl of water on top of the altar, on top of the table. So for the God, for him, this God, he will see this bowl of water to be a nectar. It contains nectar, amirta. For the human, he will say, oh, the bowl contains water. And for the hungry ghost, it will see the bowl contains what is called pus. A pus. Yeah, it's called pus. Yes. And the three beings observing one same object and saying three different objects, mentioning three different names for three different objects. Who is correct? Who is saying the truth? So among the three of them, who is saying the truth? For the hungry ghost, he will say, I see a pus. For the human, he say, I see water. The God will say, I see a nectar. Who is being true here? Who is being correct? Who is saying the truth? So by this is exactly the sunyata, or the emptiness of the water in the bowl. The way that we perceive it, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist the trueness from itself.
빼어디나 시르와다. 노르드니 슈비나 말아줘 동이도게 따와서야지. 최탐저 란라 나와. 이 나와나시 매 삼베 삼로디 지튼바세리. 동이도게 따와 지튼바. 동이도게 따와 지튼바세야 될 가르세나 잡우지리. 동이도게 따와 뭐네 말해. 동이도게 따와 잡우지리. 다디 수수 나와나시 요 말에 삼지디 이 지튼바들이지. 당원에 단에 수술라 나와나시 요 말에서 원에 하고게 차디 나 동이도게 따와 원에디 차버.
Yes. Yes. So in short, this view of understanding the emptiness of existence, it applies to all phenomena. Anything that can be understood, that which is called phenomena, anything that could be perceived, which is called phenomena, this principle applies to all phenomena. So when we say we understand that the way that phenomena exist doesn't truly exist from itself, the way that we perceive them to be truly exist from itself doesn't exist, then it is said that we already resembling someone who can understand emptiness itself. It's not a real understanding of emptiness, but resembling is more or less similar to someone who perceive it directly. By the time we understand this directly, and only that time that we say that is a true wisdom understanding emptiness. At the first level, in the initial level, when we really think it's not a real emptiness, but we are heading toward that direction, when we understand that the way we perceive things, phenomena, is not really existing from itself, it's not real from itself, then it's like we already resembling someone who has sunyata. And when we see that they don't exist by themselves, and we perceive this directly, only that time we say that we have the understanding, the wisdom understanding directly. So several phases here. the phase when we are resembling someone, and the phase then we truly understand directly.
다 남기 조 남송스야 되다 돌대를 되어들이 돌 뒤부디들이.
And by this, actually, we have covered in very brief and condensed way of explaining the three principal qualities. All three have been mentioned and elaborated briefly.
가디 계시디 제일 용거리스.
And then for the elaborated explanation, later within the text and later within the session, there is a wider and broader explanation.
가디 제일야 런데 녀버고 와서야 되래. 나는데 녀버고 와서야 돼. 가르스도 삼바 뒤전에다 내말 안에 결혼도 야고지 녀아스로. 내도 르직 라고에 결혼도 야고지 녀아스에 저러. 어디기 쳐들이디. 간다 시비데라 마차신 연주 등의 자치 좀 봐. 여와제베 남라 이든베 견대 대다 당의 이기 년수도 돼. 야고지 년수도.
And this, there is the second verse that we can read. You can follow from the text. You who are unattached to the joys of cyclic existence and strive to take full advantage of your freedom and good fortune, O fortunate ones who rely on the path pleasing to the conquerors, listen with minds full of faith. And the second verse, the last line, listen with minds full of faith. For all of you, all of us here, you who has all these qualities, you please listen with the minds full of faith.
다 식당부디 가르치지 좀 간다 시비데라 마차시니스. 다디 된다 가르치나다 견den기 기호 여러 가지 수수 기호 안에 뒤제 기호다 되바 수수 기호 간디지 임비나야 시비데와 충우 잠라 마차시니스. 시비데와 요 코에 대와 충우들이야 안에 차고 마치스 마차시니스 디리다.
The first line, you who are unattached to the joys of cyclic existence. So you, the one, the practitioners, what type of practitioners? The practitioners who are unattached. So unattached meaning to the attachment, the one who is with least attachment, the least attachment to the happiness of cyclic existence. So the first line referring you who are unattached to the joys of cyclic existence.
연주 등의 자치 좀 봐 이세야 디 가르치지 좀 봐. 다다는 알아서 대화 계다 조르바 주창회다 밀리지 톱대로 때 상부지 톱대로 연대게 때 상부지 되면 취수도 마땅와 되면서 마땅와라 닝부 된시 여바를 자외 치도 하는 인지 군도 하는 게 어디 손에 리시리라.
The second line, when it states, and strive to take full advantage of your freedom and good fortune. So the precious human rebirth is referring to the 8 types of freedom, 10 types, the 10 of fortunes. So for these 8 freedoms, 10 fortunes, we have to strive to take full advantage. So this is the meaning of the second line, strive to take full advantage of your freedom and good fortune.
다 대답이다 된주지 안에 대화제다 주버 주사회 때 상부직 토대로 다디 되면서 마땅와라 다 닝불 랭고 그래 라로 다 닝불 랭다데 다 인지 군도 균제매버 안에 준비 첨부 배바 첨배고네 안에 닝불 랭고 그래 예세들이.
The fact that someone, a being already achieved what is called a precious human rebirth with 8 freedom and 10 fortunes, and while having the freedom and fortune, you have to take full advantage, the full meaning of the freedom and fortune, and how to draw the full advantage. The way to do it is that to utilize it day and night at all times, and then the way to utilize it is to practice virya or enthusiasm.
예절이야다 겨와제베 남라 이던베스 다디 던다디 가르스디 잠바다 지단 가라 닝부 랭고레 닌제군도 닝부 랭고레 손로 닝부 조데 가르스디 잠바 람지 조 남순들이 대단다 갑들이라 람지 조 남순소 안에 겨와게베다 람라 셈닝니 이된베 이지니베 겐데 대다지 있으리다가나 겨와게베 람라 이된베 겐데 대다 안에 셈 다외고네 안에 이기년 들이
The next line, when it states, "O fortunate ones who rely on the path pleasing to the conquerors." So the path pleasing to the conquerors is referring to the three principal qualities of the path. And for the path of pleasing conquerors, who is referring to the three principal qualities, we have to put our deepest faith, the conviction, from the very bottom of the heart, put the faith and put the conviction, and those are the one who is called the fortunate ones. So the third line, "Oh, fortunate ones, you who rely on the path pleasing to the conquerors, listen with minds full of faith."
다 데이터베 년단데 간데 년고레스나 다 산제 좀데데 도에나 로레 로 라바랍도 년라 이라 송신 송바따 예겐게 뇌지捐송 방신 현재 도시 죽대베 권에 셈다요 권에 얘기 년세 도에나라 데려요 다 간다랑 아래 년뒤 잠바 안에 얘기 뇌지捐송다 현재 도시 주지 권에 대해서 람리나리 유지되리 간다르다 왜냐면 예전에 좀 숨어야 돼. 네 지마제 많이 봐. 네 샵대 봐 많이 봐. 네 카부 봐 많이 봐 세저로. 어디 숨 거래다.
And when the verse with the line saying, "Listen with the minds full of faith," then it comes down to the discussion or the instruction on how to listen properly. So how are we to listen properly? This is stated by the Buddha himself in the sutra. And for the listening properly, there are two ways to go about it. This is correspond to the Lamrim itself. When listening to the Dharma, is by removing unfavorable conditions similar to a container's three flaws and availing yourself of favorable condition, the six recognitions. And the first one is removing unfavorable conditions similar to the containers of the three flaws. This is one when the flaws of the containers, which is dirty, the one with holes, and the one with upside down.
네 카부 봐서야 돼. 당부 되래. 네 카부 봐서야 돼. 된다디다 남녀마란조 람리나 유대주들어. 안에 말아도 류부디 숭주갑로 여버지. 삼루디 절로 짱야 로제다. 나와 춘에 마셔야지 여러 어디 네 카부 봐서야 돼.
Yes. For this, we see one by one. The first one actually is the containers which is upside down. This is the first one. And the meaning of this is that during a Dharma session, somebody who is, the body is within the room, but the mind is scattering outwardly, going everywhere. This is the container which is upside down.
어디 구성편다가 이제.
Yes. And by this, perhaps it's better we conclude by up to this point because we need a little break. We take a short break.
바닥이 쉬고 나시로 이게 내 유견 송 뽕하다 현재 두시 그룹대 마하셔야 돼. 디나로네다 이제는 유견 송 뽕하셔야 돼. 당부디 답이 쉬죠. 네 카부 바셔야 돼로. 네 카부비나 아니 잘라가리 루비나 나로를 도투고 말이스. 배워 디나신다 마라조다 베줄리부디 천절을 유비나야 다 삼로디 다 남행다 되르비 철로 두땅데비나 야부마님제 두체데비나 아니 가르쳐버렸으나 네 카부바나 시켜버렸어. 아니 어디 아니 기계직이고 парче리다 간들.
So we have been discussing about removing unfavorable conditions similar to a container's 3 flaws and availing yourself to a favorable condition, the 6 recognitions. This is the way to listen to the Dharma. And for the first one, removing unfavorable conditions similar to containers 3 flaws, the first one is mentioned already, the containers which is upside down. So when the container is upside down, whatever things that we would like to put into the container, it cannot enter the container. The same goes for someone who is body, perhaps present in a teaching surrounding or teaching place, Dharma surrounding. But however, if the mind is full of distraction, for example, scattered outwardly, then this is the first flaws, the mind or listening one being upside down, and this considered to be obstruction. It's a hindrance, it's an obstruction.
아와나 최년도 간르지 년고거리에서 주베이나 다디 람릉나 유바나신 리다 달라 차고나신 안에 년고거리에서 디소로 리다도서 가림 자녀보들 유비나 시고 즉 삽산년 그리스도 어디나 신기 된르게 삽사적 년고거리에서 디소모를 되지다.
And for this, what exactly the method to listen to the Dharma? And for this, the Buddha Dharma explains, we should be listening to the Dharma as if a deer attached to an appealing sound. So if you observe a deer is very attached to appearing sound, and they will listen to the sound carefully. And in this way, we should be listening to the Dharma.
리다 달라 차고나신 년고리에서 리다도서다 뭐보도서 리다 세야라 아니 당부고 이 자녀보들 땅고리스도 자녀보들 땅도 리다 달라 차네 아니 뭐보도서 다 잡니 다 포비나야 하마고들 요구리스도
And this.
다세여로 수부르제 수부르가리
Subur. Subur se nasa subur.
수부르데가리
Joget.
아나 수부르가리 아나 수부르
Ana subur.
아다 지기도 다 간다자다 이 코란라야 답변은 간든데 잡이나 간데 포부이네 화하모고지 딘데 심디베 달라 차네로
Yes.
리다도서
Yes.
세바데베 자코란에 차데데 코디 포부이는 간데 포부이네 화하모고지
Yes.
된다들이 다세지라
Yes. So the way that deer is attached to appealing sound, this is exactly the method for the hunter when they are hunting deers. So hunters, when they're hunting deers, they are using appealing sound. Then appealing sound is being played or being used in order to trick the deers in such a way that even though the hunters usually using guns, And when they shoot the guns to the deer being very attached to the appealing sound, they says that even the deers cannot feel the bullet or the gun being shot at them, since they are very attached to the sound, and their mind goes, their attachment goes completely to the appealing sound.
어디를 수불 아나파나니스라고
Anapana, yes. This another way of the weapons being used is the arrow. Usually in the past, the hunters using arrow. There is the anapana is called arrow, and then the busur is called bow. Yeah, bow and arrow. So using the arrow hit the deers. The deers doesn't feel it because the mind completely absorbed to the appealing sound.
니바디 네 카부보다 뭐 많이 봤어야 되죠. 네 카부 위는 벌써 많이 간다르데 네 디마진스에 되죠다. 네 디마진스에 되죠. 네 디마진스에 가리에서는 네 디마진나라 세 가르로 비네 세데 알아서 사투야메 차로 그러. 세 상마 교인도 그러. 빼어디나시 아 최년부이네 아 라마 디다 디제버지게 그 간르르지 라보도 그 최랍다디 때에서 말아서 마다 더버지로 하다 소버 더버지 답에지 그 교회 출근서지 원들이 제 년부이나 안에 추 안에 네 디마진스에 차로 그래.
And then the second type of floors, containers floors, is the contaminated containers, meaning that is dirty, is not clean, is contaminated. If we have containers which is contaminated or dirty, whatever food we put inside the container, it cannot be consumed because it's contaminated. The same goes when we are listening to the Dharma. If the mind is contaminated, it becomes like a container which is dirty. Then the way we are listening to Dharma is not pure. We are thinking, oh, this person is the Guru is explaining the Dharma. What is the method this is applying? How is it the way he's explaining, and etc. And this possibly the qualities is not so very good. I myself can do such a thing. If there is sort of thinking, then it said is to be a container's floor, the second type, contaminated container.
네 샵되어서야지 안에 샵되어야나 디나를 잘 가르루비네 나로 되고 말아 출로르셔로 배워디나시 당아라저 최니 뒤잠바다 삼로 인지 직년가 제비네 고또 나르디 맵제 디데비나 안에 단들 디제비네 단다 지루이지여로 어디 배워디셔로.
And the next floors for the container is the one with hole. If a container is with hole, it cannot contain the what is inside. It cannot hold it because it will go outside. The same with listening to the Dharma. If the mind is like a hole, a container with a hole, then when you listen to the Dharma, you don't pay attention carefully. You don't have interest. Since you don't have interest, it is as if your mind have a hole. The moment you hear something, you immediately forget about it. So this is the third time.
미가시에 된대요로. 추억이 돌아오네 당내기 추억이 돌아 되지도 심나래 켜는 야마토기. 이나야 지금 다가서 깨지던데다 중자 버려지다 된데지도 뺑해버던데. 이런 것도.
This is something that we should be very careful about because this is something that happens quite a lot. It's a frequent types of mistakes. In general, we can even say that for many people, they will say that, oh, during Dharma sessions, I cannot remember anything. I don't keep anything within my mind. But if something such as like a story, it's like an event or something that is being explained about such topic, I can remember them perfectly. But for Dharma, I cannot keep them in my mind. So we should be very careful about this.
추억의 토기다 깨지셔디다 뭐 니구도 그래다. 현다게 중설에다 롱이 여러 무빙다고 되거지셔디 답배드 남란도요. dindu yunguyasara, Ramanda. Leg wongirwa.
Yes. So for this, please pay careful attention. Sometimes either with other people or even us ourselves, when we engage in the Dharma discussion, immediately we fall sleepy. If not fallen asleep completely, we fall sleepy for discussion on the topic of the Dharma. But during the conversation or discussing, analyzing about a story, about movies, is if that we are alive, we are awakened. So what is the reason? Is due to karma.
제자 니후야 매약 쉐디 안에 베줄로나 연구도 쓰고 더 가시 니마 그뒤 잠바 안에 베주 소든지 데비디 소든지 로비나 남자 니구도 그래. 디마는 니구야 말이야. 왜니?
There is even some the people saying that if we suppose you having the condition you cannot fall asleep, then this is the best time to, if you take up your Dharma books or your text. The moment you take up your Dharma books, when even though initially you cannot fall asleep, immediately fall sleepy, even just by seeing the Dharma books, and you try to engage in reading it, you will fall asleep.
어디로? 지당 알아서 레기 온기다 류 연구도 걸 간다. 디 페미시비 베디원에 남주다가랑 알아서 예대버지 그래도 지다 되는 아주 거기도 있는데 숨도 알아. 늘 기신이만 근데 빼질러 그랬어.
거기가 바로
거기 드본다 되는 숨도. 드본이나 가와이네 여러지.
맞어.
간다르디 니만 근데 빼질러는 니 구두시에.
Yes. So please be very mindful about this and be very careful about this. This saying about this, it exists everywhere. Nowadays, people say things like this, even in the monastic community, such as in the monasteries as Drepung or Gomang. It's very common because there are many monks there. It's very common. They say, when you cannot sleep, you feel you cannot sleep, just take out your Dharma books and Dharma texts. Immediately, you will fall asleep.
어두스리 다디 예진내지 교인 숨시야디 디 빵거라 다 추년디 자마데 가와이네를 람림 가와이네 다가나리 요리다 예진내지 교인 숨세디 다 마라도 파제지기 디리다 간다 추 년디 자마 파제조 어디 숨들이
So the situation being discussed is due to the karma, and in general, this what happens nowadays. And this relates directly to the unfavorable condition, similar to the container's 3 flaws. And these 3 flaws is unfavorable, meaning that this is an obstruction, and this is something to be discarded, to be abandoned. Because it is an obstruction is to be abandoned.
아니 중지시야. 지단 가시에 들려와다 남녀인이하고 그거 말이 비딜리 뒤자마 니구도 그래 다 간다. 인도요리. 다 뒤에 뒤자마 내가 리고를 들려주 줘래. 다 미지기 답에 제대 수디 까티는 니구도 그러고.
그래서
니구로.
그래서
그 기경이 뒤를 대고 말이 뒤를 대는 거 이거 말이 잡로 대대 거래. 그 까티는 잡로 대제 니구도.
그래서
다 로고도스 콜라 제모 대제로. 그 까티는 니구고로. 다 비디 산로 뒤자마 로고도스 그 니세요 말이. 카가는 러시아리.
그래서
다 비디 차디자마 다 로봇 한번 질러 넣어서 그 니구도 기경다 다 코치고 하대 그러다.
그래서
야 달라.
So there is one story regarding this. So in general, people say that in normal condition, he cannot fall asleep. But whenever he goes into a Dharma class, a PT class, a Dharma class for the monks, immediately they feel sleepy. And this is exactly happened in Drepung Monastery. There is one certain monk. So this monk is very well known. Anytime he goes into a class, he will fall asleep. At first he's sleepy, then he will fall asleep. And everybody, the classmates, know about this. So this person who knows that he's sleepy, of course, he knows that he'll be sleepy. He will not sit in front of the teacher. He will sit at the very back from the tutor of the teacher. And the classmate knows. And one day, the classmates decided to play around with him. So the class already finished, but he's still sleeping. And then the classmates doesn't wake him up. They leave it just like that until the entire class dismissed. They go out. The room only the tutor and the sleeping student, the sleeping monk.
나 제일 그 니세계디 기견이다. 이게 말이죠. 왜 니세? 한다라는 꼭 가서 무사 그래도.
Yes. And who wakes him up? So the one who wakes him up is the teacher. Only the teacher left in the room. The teacher wakes him up and say, "Hey, wake up!" And he wake up feeling shy, feeling ashamed.
어디네? 나 지단 윤도 여러 지단 루규세월에 중 현자들 여러 되네. 아이 냠도 쉬션 리그라 돼서 민욕대도 와.
Yes.
나 지단 리본다바 이나 피티 기겐세 베 미야셔라다고 말다. 피티 기겐라다 베 쉬우지 그리지다. 개천보다 피티 기겐 다른 분이 제디네 드는도 그래. 부구망고 드는도 그래.
그래서
괜찮아.
간데스.
말에다 피티 기겐이면은 수시 피티 기겐을 빼 개천보다 시나 쉬우지 그리다. 피티 기겐 다른 거 여비나 수수 통선 수술람사 드는도 그래다. 시니 때서 시나를 여러. 나 피티 레베 가블라 피티 기겐 셰rel이 셔라다고 말해. 내 구구제제 마테 해고사 때 구구만도 야촌했다고요. 나 니모지기 단다디 기겐지기다 피티 기겐 첨버려. 고랑 기루직도 와. 나 고랑 기루디기 쩨모지 그래다. 제데션 달래용 거로 기겐 잘래고 거로 뭐네. 기겐 잘래용도 잠바 디니 멀리 기겐 돼요 말. 기겐 사지션 다 패사로. 나 기루디기다 기겐 기루디기다 제데용이 여러. 아니 기겐 기루 샤 기겐 샤 기루로. 나 그 기겐 매고 그 하고로. 나 기겐자 피디 용이 도서 샤신다네 레고로. 미망 볼레고로. 나 그 가르쳐에서는 그 기계 대세간을 대대르다. 기루디기 기계요 말이. 기계 대세간을 야도 제 카도 랑대르다. 가르사지 대대르 구격현이 자요 말. 나 피디 용에도 세차체 상을 제제다 대대르마. 마대. 아니 계지식이 요 말이라. 가르쳐는 그 기계 말아. 거기다가 카좀 제 대대라. 나 피디 용에도 상마 차체 차례 마대 차례. 난 잠딩딩이잖아. 근데 야, 두다도 이렇게 기경이 많다. 기루디리다. 하고서 지나로 빼나 기겐대로 샤기 기루지 거래. 기겐데 피디 기겐 첨부를 했어. 고랑 샤를 고랑 레기징에서 기루지 거래. 나 기겐데 철로 로버데 디니 말에 기겐 철로 로버데 부기디 하고래.
네, 하고.
나 부기디 하고라. 다 기겐데 비디 기겐 첨부 인상 샤신다네 기루만 볼래용 거라 비디라. 내가 저저 당고르지 이면은 망 볼래용 거라. 다 기겐 뭐네요 말이. 내디데 기루디기 기겐디기 삽제지. 기겐 휴식을 기루디기 도 대대리. 다 안에 비디 용이 망 뭐여라. 다망 뭐 용에 대해서 야천에 따요 말이. 다 기겐 안에 차체 안에 상마마 대대리. 마 대대디다 기겐 깨지 신이요 말아. 다 근데 야 갈래데 다디다 기루디리. 그래서 기루디 트렌도다.
담미 민도로아 데사 다강라.
미 요레스. 미 기루디리다. 하고서 말해.
데사 강라 디 게토티레.
기겐디 피디 기겐로와. 피디 기겐데라 기루만 보여래. 피디 용이. 다 니마지 기겐디 요 말에 철로 그래. 이나야 기겐 코랑 샤기 기루지 거로. 기루디기 기겐 철로 하고로. 다 미션다도 피디 레고 여봐 기루디기 하고.
네, 하고.
레드다 유주데라 기루디기 기겐 매상 샤기 기루디레다. 피디 용이 기루 말에 샤기 기루디기 기겐 휴식간라 대대르구나. 다 현다도 용제로. 다 차체 별로 제자마 대대리다. 구대리. 나 남이나 차체 장마 차디다 기겐 마직 라비용으로. 다디 라비용 말이. 가르전에 기계요 말아. 기계 메디다 근데 상마야 두다도 이게 다도 기계요 말이 기루직 대대 그러다. 전화하고서 주월에다 기루디가 된거래다. 근데 상마 걸러 차세 디제라. 안에 된거래. 전화하고서
tonta kare. Tonta di hago di na yang tí cặp đi đúng tí tròn tạm ngôn tí cả đi.
그래. 조그레 해서 지단
Yes,
든들
job
요리
is
해서 지단 든들 요리 해서 중인지부 세우러 다 간다래. 다저랑 다 겸셔야 돼. 겸셔야 맵사 되다. 오늘은
Yeah, con đã.
말에 다 기루 이 군이들 중지 시에서 다양 개개인기 기루기 개개인기 삽제제 들리지 요리 해서 나 리거르다.
Yes.
응.
Yeah. So there is a story. Yeah, there's a story because before we say that a story about the sleeping monk, and then there is another context. This also happening in Drepung monastery and the Sangha community. So within the Sangha community, such as in Drepung, there is what is called a class, a lesson that takes place in the form a tutor, the tutor of the class, Piti Gegen. And Piti Gegen, if you know, is someone who is scary, frightening. So Piti Gegen usually is known as is very strict. So the monks will be afraid of this class tutor, the teacher, because usually there will be like someone who is a charisma and with the strict discipline. So whenever a monks meet the class teacher, they will try to avoid him. They will not directly address him. They will go sideways and they will not meet him directly face to face. And when they come into face to face with the teacher, usually they just look down. They will not look up to the teacher, the PT Gegen, and as if like you confronting. Then nobody does that to the teacher, because they will just look down and paying respect and walk away because frightening and scary. So one day there is one particular class tutor, which is very well known because he's very big. Is a high level of the class tutor, is well known. And usually this teacher will have his own room, and within this room will have his own student staying together within the room. So they stay together. But then at the time the teacher is away, he's went to somewhere else, but the room is there and everybody knows this is the room of the teacher. And the students from other rooms will come because they want to study with this teacher. And also there is the student who stay together with the teacher. The student who's living with the teacher, he knows the teacher is away, so he knows. So what he does here is that he sit on where the teacher sit. He is acting as like a substitute. He doesn't tell anybody. He just sit there quietly. And then the students from other rooms, other houses will come. And when you addressing a teacher like this, you don't talk too much. You just come, you prostrate and you sit in order to listen. And then when they do that, usually they just look down, they come to the room, they prostrate and sit, and nothing happened because the teacher doesn't give any teaching. And when they look up, because it's silent quite a long time, they look up, they see there is nobody, the teacher is not there. Only when they look up, they realize that the real teacher is not there.
제자다 뒤 가르를 수도 있다마 그 이루 비디 용의지 여러 용의도 제대 터버리 제대 충분되는 말이 제대 터버리 그게 되게 부구 충분히만 더 이런 말이 제가 다 관제 부구 충분되려 제대 전부 되게 차체 들을 다디 there's 개무쇼버리지다 간다.
I think that this is like something that could happen in the monastic community, but this is something hilarious, actually supposed to be hilarious because it happens for the young monks. So the young monks, there's a higher class. So when higher class, the young monks come and then they prostrate to the class teacher. And then when they prostrate to the class teacher, they realize that it's not the teacher. They just come and see, oh, the teacher is not there, but they already entered the class for the young monks.
나디 제라 다 제대 터버들로 여러와 다 도서 째면서 거래. 나 보고 충분히 통행도 계란도 기기 비기 로고도 싫어. 그것을 말해 다다디 제대 토보디기 안에 부구 중조될 차체 사러와
그래.
다니지디 중사비 제일 부구디가 투그러와 제일 가사갈라 로가
네,
되디다
가사갈라.
메디오 좀 좋을란 거
그렇지.
제대 토보될
그렇지.
오왜 계란도 기긴 피기 로고도서 계란 기기 오늘 전에 기기 말에 부구 중조지로
그렇지.
어디리
Okay. So in the context of the young monks who come to the class and doing prostration without realizing initially that the teacher is not there, they are prostrating to the substitute, the disciple of the masters. But already they have conducted the prostration. Then when the class finish, when they are in the monastery surrounding in the environment, they will meet each other again. When they are meeting the young monks with the substitute one will kind of mocking the young monks and saying, "Hey, where is your teacher? Where is your teacher? Who the one when in the class? Where is your teacher?" They will ask and joking with them.
아디기도 아 텐지 두시 죽된 바세에 되다 개개인의 숨봉하데 도차서 아 텐지 두시 죽된 바세 예래 다디 가르에스디 잠바 랑라 네바다비 두시 제로 담베철라 민지 두시 기위신이라 네바 켜바다비 두시 다 망고 담고 거제 담보니 휴신의 약설이
Yes.
랑라 네바다비 두시스야 되다 담보디 디르와 나 랑라 네바다비 두시스야 되 가르에스디 잠바 다 수수 네바이나 암지디 땡고로라 암지디 땡고디 잠바 암지가 라바디 마주 지고로와 암지가 라바디 마제비나 마제 나제디 다투고 말이죠 배워디나시 최디다 안에 매낭신이 두시디샤 안에 말아줘다 네바낭신이 두시샤 말아줘다 베지 나제디 다고나 매사고바나시 로 말아줘다 안에 베지 타바다 탐지키비 고바 톱 고비나 안에 최 나로를 가숨바디 말아줘 야고지 지고 그러와 예위신이 가르 숨바디 야고지 냥고 그러와 어디
So for the previous story, maybe it's my fault. The one who's translating is the fault because it's actually to meant as a joke. Maybe because the way I listen and I talk, then a joke becomes a no jokes. So I'm sorry for that. And yeah, Gisela also explaining this. What I can explain first, but then it's okay. We try to continue because after this, availing yourself of favorable condition, the 6 recognitions. So for the 6 recognition, there are six conditions that we have to pay attention to. The first one, that we have to consider ourselves as a patient. So for a patient, it is important to see a doctor. Whatever the doctor says, we listen to the doctors. So whenever we listen to the Dharma, we have to consider ourselves as a patient, and we listen to the teacher as if the doctor. Whatever the instruction being given, we have to take it as if taking medicine. If we're not taking the medicine, the sickness will not be cured. So for us who are aspiring for liberation and complete enlightenment, we should listen to the master as if we are a patient, someone who is sick.
니바 담배철라 맨지 두시 깨봤어야 되다 다 네바디 내지 나바디 신나다 매지 고거로 고란 나절바비 매지 고거로 어디 나시 말아줘 다다 나저 매삼 유비잖아 나저 요리스 가레 나저리스도 뉴모베 나저디 요리스 다 말아줘 뉴모베 나저디 파세고로 다 뉴모베 나저디 파세야게 매디 가리스디 잠바 매디 담배철 코나리스 어디 제자
Yes. The second recognition is to be able to recognize the Dharma as the medicine. So right now, we are a patient, we are sick, we are ill. Maybe some of you think, oh, I'm okay, I'm not ill, I'm not sick. But actually, we are a patient of sickness. And what is the sickness? We are a patient of sickness of the klesha. We are sick due to klesha. We have a klesha sickness. We have a klesha disease. We are sick, we are a patient. And for this, the klesha disease or the klesha sickness, what is the cure? The cure is none other than the Dharma. So for this, we have to recognize it. recognizing, identifying the Dharma being the cure.
예리. 안에 숨바디 기회 신이라 멤버 캐바다비 두시 있으라. 멤버다비 두시 세배요 말에 멤버 캐바 멤버나네 멤버 캐바다비 두시. 이 가르에서도 잡아다 멤버 캐바요나 네버되게 나서 가르 이미데 야보지 켄 켄베 돈에 안에 매 제용 거로 뭐다 매 사다 간데 사고리 땅다 간데 땅고리 다디베 유주 간데 줄에 땅고리 디 상마 뭐 랍잖은 거 여러 어디 나시 말한줄래다 유위신이기다 말한줄 뉴모베 나사디파 매버 차야게 탑 간데 이미데 상마 나마 기위신이 아니 되는 연구여봐 총장 어디 순거리다.
The third recognition is to recognize the master as the doctor. So not only that is a regular doctor, it must be a skillful doctor. Who is a skillful doctor? The one who can identify or diagnose the sickness, what type of sickness it is, and then who can identify the correct medicine. And not only that, who can give the proper instruction on how to consume the medicine, how to take the medicine, what is the time to take the medicine, what type of medicine, etc. This is all the qualification of a good doctor. And in the same way, when we are curing our klesha sickness, our klesha disease, we need a skillful master, the one who can say to us to help us identify our klesha, and the one who can give us the method to overcome the kleshas. And for this, we must rely totally, purely on the spiritual master as a doctor.
제자다 암지디 케바만 중이나 암지 임바잠지 년가 잡으러 왔다. 나자디 야고 따마신 매 야고 제마신 예원게다 네버디다 안에 소라 년가 요거든도 수시기로 와. 어디나시 계신이 체단돼 맞지 마주모이나 계신이 다가서 계신이 이게 안에 말아줘 유지 뉴모베 나자디 파 매버서야 파샤 뉴모야 치르치르 다양한 년가 요리다.
Just like we need a skillful doctor. So if the doctor is not a skillful doctor, just a regular doctor, someone is just ordinary one, someone who is not able to identify or diagnose the disease, because he cannot diagnose the disease properly, he cannot give the cure or the medicine properly. And if we cannot give the proper medicine with the proper way, what can happen is that even a doctor can harm the life of the patient. It can harm and creating harm to the life of the patient. The same way that applies to the spiritual masters. A spiritual master must be someone with skillful qualification. It cannot be just regular master, a regular guru, someone that just the fact that we need a guru, then we take someone as a guru. It's not like that. This is if this someone that we consider to be guru or master, he cannot identify the klesha. Because he cannot identify the klesha, he cannot give the proper method. What happens of the effect of this is that instead of the klesha going down, it's going up. It's decreasing or intensifying. We should be very careful on this.
어디 제상 알아줘 기위신이 있어야 돼. 당부 땡dü니 세단 대바 기위신이 땡dü 예침부 레스야게 나된다 두스에는 아주 하고야지 그래도. 오늘 저는 멤버답이 두시제는 갑돌 속는 리그리. 멤버 캐버스가 금지돼 든데.
So during the practice of the relying upon a spiritual master, within the stages of explanation in the beginning and the initial period, the qualification of spiritual masters are given, are explained, are detailed, and expressed that it is very important to have a qualified spiritual masters. Actually, in practical terms, we can understand this easily in the analogy of a doctor. We need a skillful doctor. We need a qualified doctor. And by this, if we want to understand the qualification of spiritual master, just think of a qualified doctor.
나간다리 시바디 가레스디다 안에 내내 냠졸랑 봐라 내 소유 두시 세디로다 내 소유 두시 다디 간데리 시디삼바 지당하라조 다 네베 네라 펜지기 메 펜야데 모네데 멘기 펜거로 말아도 네 나자 맵스야데 모네데 아니 멘기 아니 맵스고르데 이나야다 메데 간데지 아니 고고요 메데 아니 암지케바들라 라레브로 어디나시 말아도 뉴모베 나자 바 맵스야 쪼데 추고스고요 이나야 최 뜬근기 기회신이 되게 최 딘리지기 토네 안에 계랑의 유모비 나츠파 매버스 차그레서 그 남이 친지 말로고 뜬기지 그거라 된다도 얻어들이
So the fourth recognition is to be able to identify that taking the medicine to be the cure of our own sickness. So when we are sick, when we are a patient, we are prescribed a medicine by a qualified doctor. And after being prescribed a medicine, we must take the medicine itself. So here, in the context of being a patient, we are a patient of a klesa disease, a klesa sickness. And klesa sickness, the antidote or the cure is the Dharma. The Dharma that been given or instructed by a qualified spiritual masters. And for this, we must take the cure, we must take the prescription, we must apply the instruction.
나도 암지케바디기 수수 내디 무슨네 메디다디 사고구두세다 람든 상만랑 사베 제려야 수수 메디 뒤주 딱다라 마사와 냐 메디 마세바제 대비나 안에 나드디 잡에 말이죠 안에 디규 나드 마다야 규디 암지 안에 규를 베서나 말이 안에 맹기 규를 베서나 말이 메디 수수 사요 말이 암지 규 말이 암지 숭바디 수수 제요 말이 다 수익 교회에서는 수수는 리로 어디나시 라마 기회 신이기 안에베지 수수주주 뉴모 바시 약에 탑 친지 말라고 떼요. 디디 지구리 디디 지구 말이 상마 때문에 수수 마제제 대비에나 안에 추기 렘버리베서는 추기 교회 말이 수수 마제리 기회 신이기 교회에서는 기회 신이기 교회 말이 기회 신이 숨바데 수수 마제로 어두스리 딩이 빼된 자고 여러분
So by the time that we already have a qualified doctor, so a qualified doctor already diagnosed the correct disease and already prescribed the correct medicine. It's the same when a spiritual master already diagnosed what is the klesa disease. And due to the klesa disease, he gave the cure being the Dharma instruction. But however, if the Dharma instruction being the cure already prescribed, then if this not taken, if it is not taken, you don't eat the medicine, you don't apply the instruction, then what happens is that the sickness itself will not be cured. So if in this condition, is it the fault of the doctor? Certainly not. The doctor already diagnosed your condition. Is it the fault of the medicine? Certainly not. The medicine has been prescribed. So whose fault is this in this condition when you are not being cured? So it comes back to yourself, ourselves, being not taking the medicine, being not applying the instruction, not applying the Dharma. So here, making this situation is more important for us to realize that a spiritual master is none other than someone who can prescribe the correct method to apply the klesa sickness. The correct method meaning this is something that is not incorrect, the correct one, the proper method, the real method. The real method to cure the klesa sickness, what is to do, what is not to be done. And after this being prescribed, then if someone who does not apply the instruction, is it the fault of the master? Certainly not. Is it the fault of the Dharma? Certainly not, because it's the fault of someone who is not applying the instructions.
어디 때중에 노스 이 가서 주주디 인도네시아 주주디다 비기디 지구려면요 유질레 사실 이 듀어딜리지요
So
가면 죽으면 됩니다.
Kamaduk also.
네, 더 듀어딜리지는 메디 때중 노스디
Yes.
리그리 다 뒤지
So up to this point, perhaps I have mistaken about the timing because my timing perhaps still related with the Indonesia. There is a different timing. So we are supposed to be finishing by 5. So we have a still few minutes. Then we'll come to the question and answer session. We will complete the explanation up to this point and come to question and answer. Di Dewa kasih di yore. Dewa
What
cik.
are the Diwanaroni?
Di pernah jam dua di pernah semki ki jego yora jam dua yang yoris jam dua kapla. Jadi jam dua kapla pernah tengging di sungsung. Cawe lama cik matok yomari cawe lama mambo yoris. Pernah jam dua kapla jam dua pernah di nama. Chosin kapla lami cik yora tengo jam dua kapla di cawe lama di kanderes cawe lama mambo yoris. Jadi jam dua jedu de upacara de jam dua upacara. The cawe lama mambo ina jam dua kandes jetang di kanderes. De. So we start with the first question. In terms of taking refuge ceremony with a master, how does that relate to the term root guru? How about if we have multiple root gurus? How does that work in the context of the ceremony of taking refuge?
Di kandeji gurisina ta jidang tabde burijiri. Pere chasana ngaranzu kundi nubi lusiya di jamdu kabla choshin kumya ane lama tenga kumya soro. Ya kundi nubi lusiya chikoya rwa. Ta ji lama sena keranyi, yidam sena keranyi, kandu sena keranyi chik kumya chiyo rwa. Pewa di. Ta di kandere si di zamba pena susule ya zawe lama sumriji yubiyina pere chasana rwa. Ta ngodi ta pena jamdu kabla ya ta zo ngaranzu nambadi sanje chumjenti ki nambadi kongo yorwa. Nambadi rwa. Cheza zawe lama sumba di yinsira. Pere chasana ta nili chasana. Pena ta di ngodi jamuri muchi sinaya, ribuchi sinaya, ane keranyi samsari. Ane nambadi, ane di sanje chumjenti ki di nambashati yu. Wadi le samdaya. Tai lama sumi shi, zawe lama zawe nga tu kase yubiyane ta chiklu wadu samdama. Di chikpare namye samdanda de chikpu chinyari.
Lasso. So based on the question just proposed, if we were try to address the question in very simple approach, very simple terms. For example, in taking refuge, we must rely on the refuge field. And the refuge field, if you know, there is a refuge field when we condense all into one, which is called the precious refuge field. That is called like that. Or the refuge field that's related to the 5 groups of masters. So those are the option for the refuge field. But then you suppose in the context of someone who has 2 root guru. So imagine someone have 2 root guru or root masters. So what to imagine or to think at the time of taking refuge. So during the taking refuge ceremony, we should imagine the refuge field taking the appearance of the Buddha. So the Buddha and this person who has 2 root masters, say for example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Kyabje Tapo Rinpoche being the 2 root masters. So what he imagined or addressed as the refuge field is the Buddha as the appearance, but the nature is the 2 of the root masters. So either His Holiness the Dalai Lama or the Tapo Rinpoche, but the appearance in the form of the Buddha Sakyamuni as the refuge field. So this is for the context of root masters being 2 in numbers. So the same applies directly to however many numbers that you have. It could be 3 root masters, 4 root masters, 5, 6, so forth. And the way to do it, the appearance that you imagine is the Buddha, but the nature is the root masters.
Adi kandere sena, lama sumji sungwa nyamdu di kandere tebu mebi ina. Kubzidi karesin. Maranzo zawe lama yinchinje de ya 라마 코랑이 뭐네 산제 이남에나 나라종원에 산제 뭐지 두시디 샤고요로 샤고요로
네.
제가 찍고 차요 제가 된다디
Yes. So in the context, for example, there are three road masters, then the three being imagined as one in nature, taking the appearance of the Buddha. Sometimes maybe perhaps you think that it's not comfortable to think that three road masters having one same nature. Actually, it goes along when we say that the master is the Buddha himself. So between master and the Buddha, when we say it's the same nature, it's actually the same when we say that all masters is all the same nature. In fact, we have to imagine the master with the same nature as the Buddha. So the master being three in numbers, these three also have the same nature. What are their nature? The Buddha.
이페 디샤고라 간데르스디 잠바 지진 잠범긴 도데케나 롤라로 페나로 마란즈 추 숭아여로 숭아에 대해 초신을 거래 샤르니 요리 눔니 요리 초시간에 요리 당부 다 창마데 라오데 나론도나 다 샤르기 용유 추디레 눔니 용유 추디레세 촌에 이와 체토고 말이 디나신 알아즈 라마도스 소소 계획 내갑수 민다와르 지비네 상제 사비네 찍고 차는
This is precisely explained in the great scriptures by Arya Maitreya in the text called in Tibetan is Dodekian. So imagine a big sea, a big water, a body of water like a sea. So when a sea before comes into the great ocean, it comes from the rivers. So the seas comes with the rivers flowing from the eastern side, the rivers flowing from the western side. There are four different directions, the main direction. They could be four different directions initially, but when they come to the great ocean, everything becomes in the same nature. Within the great body, you cannot tell this water comes from the eastern river or the western river, etc. So for the masters, it's the same. When the masters, who are the Buddhas himself, when they become a Buddha, they become one nature, one in nature.
이래 단단하라지 지주 드라마세야라고 안에 지주 잠배양세야를 더 민다민다 지금 여대로 얘네 봐도는 지주 드라마세네 잠배양이 제레시스네 지주 드라마리스 아주 견에 쳐버지 두주 찍고쳐 초신이 추도도 상마 비기 자전을 반 레소는 찍고쳐서 어디나 신이리스 그래 산제 탐정 로직 봤어도
So for example, usually we address or referring to the certain specific types of Buddha, saying that this is Tara, and that is Manjusri, and this is Avalokitesvara. When you think about it, Tara, if you say Tara, actually Tara is Manjusri. So if you say Manjusri, Manjusri is the same as Avalokitesvara, and you say Avalokitesvara, Avalokitesvara is the same with Tara. So it's the same with the great body of water. We cannot differentiate which the water come from the eastern river or the western river. All have become one in nature.
어떤 데그 공부지 시비이나 사회라마 수미비에네 찍도 다디 맞지 뭐 찍도 전에 검토를 어두스리
And by this, for someone who has three root masters, and when he tried to meditate on the three root masters, these three root masters can be one in nature. This is how to go about it.
어두지소서로
And by this, we come to the end of the timing. The time is up for this session. We complete this session up to this point.
다기 진이 사회 교화를 변화로
And
여거 지지 로사도고 예된데 님보리도 세제 최세 빨리 중앙에 다기 교화 간사와 되는 지리 말류 대세세라고 보고 쇼 어라어라 린제니데 제바 산예신도 니데로 로그 남다시라 주가 오로라는 넬라가 니아다요 non đề giờ làm bộ thành nên xin đến sẽ ra cùng giờ đề làm sẽ sống nên đề cùng sang nên đồ tình Ade na ye ye la de de yo ye je ba rin do dong de nan zang do de kun ye do je ye ye se je me da me se ra buen do ya ye ma ga nan da lan da de wa ma yo man ze de wa je la je 这些多来增巴的也，我的南界大多着解，那些家的就个